Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show, and we are here today with Zen Benefiel. He has his Master of Arts in Organizational Management, his MBA in Project Management. He's a certified Transformational Life Coach, hypnotherapist, and Possibilities Coagulator. Welcome, Zen.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be here, man. This is a real hoot.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I owe it all to synchronicity.
And being a Possibilities Coagulator, because you are also a master at putting people, places, and things together to do cool stuff.
And that's how we all got here today.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's just jump right into it. What does the law of attraction mean to you?
Well, the standard definition, let's start there so we're all on the same page. Whatever you think and feel strongly, you're going to attract. It's that simple. Okay. How I have seen that throughout my life has been in varying degrees and intensities, and I seem to be somewhat in tune since I was a kid as far as being able to have stuff show up, not really knowing what was going on, but having this inner and outer connection, if you will, of having stuff show up. I've been an eternal optimist, so I've had some really cool stuff show up. As an example of that, early 90s, this is right after I went through a really terrible period in my life, a divorce and leaving the corporate world, and I went from almost 60 grand a year to less than 6. And so I'm rebuilding. And as part of that, I got involved with the Christown Lions Club, putting events together. And I met a gentleman through there that was directing a television show for cable access that was being hosted or supported by the Christown Lions Club. And he asked me if I wanted to get involved. And I said, sure. So I took all the training that was necessary, behind the camera as a floor director, in the control room doing sound and video, and then on the, I think it was an Amiga computer for the computer graphics and stuff like that. Did some stuff with the switcher. And he was doing a show, we called it the Origami Man. Harry Eagle, the Origami Man. So he was teaching kids how to fold paper. Okay, so the talent was being a little challenging with the director, and one day I'm sitting in front of the computer, and this whole time I'd been thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great? I'd love to have my own show. Didn't say a word. Okay, and I'd sat with this for probably 6 months. And he turns to me this day, and he's frustrated. And he says, Zen, dude, why don't you do a show? Please! You got all the New Age connections and stuff to do it, because you've been involved with the community for a number of years now. And I said, I'd love to. I'm like, yes, on the inside. Okay, so what do I do with that now? What do we call it? Because I'm thinking to myself, I can't call it New Age, because this is in early 90s, and that term still wasn't really comfortable for a lot of folks. So we came up with the idea of One World. And I still had no idea what the format was going to be. I just knew that we were going to launch it. So I'm thinking about, questioning internally. This is how the law of attraction works. You go inside and you start asking questions, and then you magnetize things to come to you. So this is part of the action step, right? So I'm magnetizing, and I'm laying in bed one afternoon meditating, and all of a sudden the format of the show just trickles through my consciousness, and I'm watching it as it's happening. Here's the questions, and it turned out to be, how did you get where, who are you? How did you get where you're at? What prompted you to do what you're doing from both inner and outer perspectives? What fears did you encounter in the process? And more importantly, how did you overcome them? How do you see that fitting in the human experience around you, your work environment, the city, state, nation, those kinds of things? And then what evidence do you see that we are actually moving into a global community? I want to take it, to the full extent. And do you see any barriers to that? And if so, do you see them coming down? And what evidence do you see of that, making it practical? Okay. And then what practical advice can you give for everyday living to the audience? And so this was just a really wonderful explanation and exploration for how we all work through stuff. I was looking for that golden thread that I could share and bring that out of each individual guest. I started out with one, went to two, and then hopefully, it was a little disparate in their backgrounds so that we could have a really wonderful conversation about how we all say the same thing differently.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of back up just a little bit. And you were talking about, you went back and you did some meditation.
Right.
Now we know that meditation is a very important principle.
That's one of the key factors in the law of attraction.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people think, meditation, maybe I don't get that. But really it's really important to kind of quiet down your mind. And that's when a lot of these ideas started flowing to you. Now, had you been meditating long before that?
Oh, I've been meditating since I was a teenager. I learned TM and various other forms of meditation when I was in college at 18, and just really had a wonderful opportunity because I was exploring myself at that time. I had some experiences and some really bizarre stuff that happened that I needed to learn how to ask questions and shut up, which is what is the toughest thing to do in the meditation. We want to answer our own questions instead of waiting for that internal intelligence to speak up, that voice within, if you will. We've all got. We just usually don't stay quiet enough to really listen to it. And there's a sensation actually that goes along with that in the meditation. When you reach that place, when you finally, whether you use a mantra or a tape or even if you just put your fingertips together and feel your heartbeat in them until the point where you can get quiet, you can actually feel a shift internally, whether you want to call it a vibratory shift or a sensation or whatever that might be, but it's a noticeable shift in the sensations that you're aware of, and it gets really quiet.
So, okay, and that's perfect. So, and a lot of folks, that's where they have some trouble. I know I did at first, is trying to quiet down that conscious thinking mind.
Sure.
Because, my whole life I had let my thinking mind kind of have its way, and it did a lot of back and forth thinking, and I never really knew how to quiet down my mind. So when you first start trying to, we try all these different techniques, and I tried your technique where putting your fingers together, feeling your heartbeat. And I think, and a lot of folks, they will also concentrate on their breathing, listen to their breathing. What methods work best for you? I mean, especially when you were starting out. For someone starting out, what would you tell somebody?
Well, I don't know if I want to talk about how I got started in it because it was.
What would help other people?
Let me put it this way. That internal dialogue. Okay, when I first began needing to meditate, it was because I was experimenting with altering my consciousness with various things. And so I needed to find that place within it where I was still and fearless. Mm-hmm. And it's the same place. Lots of things open up that door for us. That door of fear, false evidence appearing real to most of us. And we don't want to open that door because we have no idea what's on the other side of it. In reality, that door is the opportunity for us to walk through and find something new that gives us a completely new sensation of trust and the ability to bring those things together in magnetizing what it is that we desire. Because the first thing that happens is, how we get these stories about be careful what you ask for, because it's going to show up. Are you ready? Well, what happens when it shows up generally is that people butt pucker. The whole body just tenses up. It's like, oh no, here it is. Is it real? Can I have it? Really? And they don't give themselves permission to receive it. And there's all this mental chatter going on within. The internal dialogue is what Don Juan called it when he was teaching Carlos Castaneda. That's where I first learned about it. And those kinds of things are happening internally with all of us. That's what we need to shut up and realize that, first of all, become aware that it's happening. Watch it for a little bit. It's not necessarily to stifle it, because the more you try and fight it, the more it's going to happen. What we resist persists. Another part of the law of attraction, right? Okay. So in that process, you have to really just become aware of what's going on first, and then you can begin to adjust.
So let's kind of stick with the internal dialogue.
Right.
So maybe you're kind of meditating on a project that you want to produce, or whatever
Sure.
it is, a career, a relationship. It doesn't really
Well,
matter.
let's keep it practical, because that's really what I understand you trying to do is bringing this whole consciousness into what we might call a practical mysticism, to where we can apply these things in our daily lives and our workplace and our relationships and the world in general.
Right. So an example would be got the mind kind of quieted down, and then maybe some of those limiting beliefs will kind of pop in. That thinking part of your conscious might say something like, well, maybe you don't have enough experience to do that. Maybe you don't have the education to do that, or you've never done it before. Or are you sure you can do it? How do you kind of treat that when those thoughts creep in?
One of the things that I found, like, I'm going to refer back to the television show, because I did over 100 of these shows, probably over 200 guests, and each one of them had a different story for the fears they addressed, and that mental dialogue that was going on within them that said, oh, you can't do this, or, that's impossible, or whatever, And each one of those things, you can tell when it's a limiting belief system. You feel it. You feel yourself wither. And there's a sensation of withdrawing your energy from whatever it is that you're doing. And depending on how in tune you are with your own feelings during that process, you're going to experience that to a greater or lesser degree. And the more you can watch that, then the more you can begin to reverse it and actually open your heart up and your mind and begin to embrace what's coming to you, or even just open yourself to it more. Now, with the process of the thinking, we're naturally thetonic beings. It's a Greek word that means thinker. Okay, and thetan, you silly fool. So with that, we tend to constrict ourselves, and whatever we believe of ourselves is true, even if it's in error. Just because we believe it, we're going to magnetize it, we're going to attract it, and we're going to see it show up not only in our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual state, we're also going to witness it in the world around us. So it gives us an opportunity to really check in internally and externally to see where we are with things.
So, and this is so important, is I want to talk about it for another minute, but is the fear. So when if you feel the fear kind of pop into your head, that limiting belief, that fear of whatever it is, you feel it. So you're saying, don't ignore it.
No, embrace it.
Right. You don't want to, because you don't want to resist.
Right.
So you're saying embrace it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of part of when they say, kind of surrendering to it?
I had a wonderful mixed blood Cherokee friend of mine. His name Willie Whitefeather. He explained this. He was a storyteller, and he says, first, the fear is false evidence appearing real. What we seek to do is free every anxious reaction. And then, of course, my silly self popped in and said, yeah, what we want to do is F everything and run, which is what usually happens. However, when we feel that anxiety, it's usually in the solar plexus, right? That's a sensation. We interpret that sensation as, uh-oh, or we can interpret it as, uh-oh, just in that facial expression. It's a different from withdrawing to anticipating. So that sensation could be anxiety. It could be some fear-based stuff that's coming up, or it could be what's known as the quickening, where you're actually being sensitive to that cool stuff, that you're anticipating to show up is actually present, and it's your mere awareness and your point of view as to whether you see it or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You're saying that to make sure you're open
Yeah.
to any of these possibilities as they
Have the right set of glasses on if something shows up. Be able to look from a positive, optimistic side, anticipating. That's the quickening. Okay, where you're feeling this, something really cool is about to happen. I can feel it. As opposed to, something's about to happen and I really don't want to be here.
Okay, so then let's talk about perception.
Right.
Because I think that's kind of the next step right there. And so what you're saying is when that fear crops up, if you perceive it as kind of the next step or something to get excited about, instead of being fearful over. So
this sounds really silly, but what you got to do is get to the point where you're going, oh wow, I'm afraid. Cool.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of it. When you anticipate, because it's challenging you to grow.
Mm-hmm. Well, so many of us we spend a lot of our lives being worried about stuff ever since you were a kid, maybe depending on what teachers and parents, it kind of instilled worry in you. It's natural. A lot of times teachers and parents didn't know what they were doing either. So you have this natural tendency to just worry about things. So I think it's kind of like a muscle, right? It's kind of muscle memory to be excited and happy about what is about to happen to you instead of being fearful.
And it really does depend, as we know, what we experience as a child, we're going to repeat as an adult. And depending on the environments that we were in, we might be fortunate enough to have those very open and anticipatory and encouraging kind of environments. Or we could have something completely opposite that just really tries to shut down and stifle us. And as an adult, then we have to look at how that cellular memory is processing our perceptions and offering it up for us to see. And then we can make new choices.
Yeah, I think, and I've really seen that in myself recently too, especially when you start thinking along the lines of the next thing that's going to happen to me is going to be cool.
Right.
All right. And it is. It turns out to be something cool.
Well, like your example of finding the mirror in Hobby Lobby. Okay, you went through the store and you were looking for everything and looking for the mirror, couldn't find it, and you finally said, oh yeah, I forgot. I can do this. And as soon as you stopped and focused, within 60 seconds, you found the mirror.
Well, so now I have to tell the story. Can you hand me that mirror right there?
Sure.
Just hand me that mirror, because I might as well go ahead.
I thought I'd give you a nice segue to tell you about it.
And tell this story right here. So thank you. So I'm looking for a mirror because we were doing this video shoot, and I knew some folks might want to kind of prep before they get on camera. And I'm in this really big store. It's a big, giant hobby store, stuff everywhere. And I've gone through the store at least twice, okay? And I'm running out of time. And I think, I just can't find anything, And then I thought to myself, wait a minute. Well, I should use the law of attraction. And I literally said, it will come to me. All right. And within a couple of seconds, I walked about 3 feet further down the aisle, and I see this mirror pop sticking up above some other stuff that was obscuring it, that was in front of it. And so it took, after saying it will come to me, within literally a few seconds, I find this mirror and I grab it. I said, score, this is mine. I'm taking it home. It's real nifty. It's made out of metal and it's really cool. So, and it was 50% off.
Cool.
All right.
So Now you're talking about the sensations and how we engage the process of magnetizing. Those sensations, those feelings, those thoughts that you had after you found that are repeatable. We can call them up at any given time. Once you experience something, it's in the memory bank. It's a file. All you gotta do is know where the directory is and call the file up. That's sometimes challenging because we forget.
Mm-hmm.
We get so many distractions going on all the time that it's hard for us to be in that place, which having the name Zen kind of promotes me to be in that place most of the time over the years. And it allows us to be quiet, still, call up those sensations, ask for what we want, anticipate it being there, and know that it's going to be within a matter of time. Now, depending on what we are manifesting, whether it's a mirror or a new world order, those are huge, there's a huge distance in, so there's time frames involved. The universe works to our benefit when we align with it. Some things take time, and time is what allows us to experience. And there's all kinds of growth that takes place in that process when we're ready and willing to step into it.
So this is a good place to talk about action.
Right.
Now, a lot of things, like the mirror, didn't take much action. Okay, but then there's other things that, and people have trouble with these. Is maybe they want a new job, they want a new career, something that will require some action.
Right.
Because a lot of folks, they read some things online, they get misled that all you have to do is sit on the couch and hope and wish, and then maybe go out to the mailbox to check to see if there's some checks in the mail.
We really want. Now, that's not to say that isn't possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not because it's happened to me. So.
All right. So the norm is that you got to do something. You have to reciprocate once you've asked for something. I've been really fortunate. I have a background, done more things in one lifetime than most people do in 10. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of understanding of being a possibilities coagulator, of putting people, places, and things together to do stuff. So there's all kinds from small scale to large scale. And I understand processes, procedures. Mm-hmm. The master's degrees have also helped me to edify my understanding of how things work from both hard skills and soft skills, or technical things and human emotions, and how to get people to work together. So all those things are important features in changing your life. And as a transformational life coach, my clients, that's what I work with them on, setting up action plans. Okay, you've got a goal. It's down here. Now, what do we need to do to step back and look at all the different things that will get you to that place? And it's definable. It's measurable. You can actually set an action plan in place, walk through the steps, and get what you want. That's part of that magnetism. Now, the magic happens in that process when really cool stuff shows up that you don't anticipate. And it will, guaranteed. And it'll make things all that much more pleasurable because you know they're going to be there, for one. And when they show up, they're still kind of, you never know exactly what they're going to be. And when they do, then it just gives that whole process that much more credence. And it gives it that much more excitement in your own life because you're seeing the results. You're shifting from where you didn't want to be to where you really want to be, and maybe even better. Because just because you have the goal doesn't mean that that's what you're going to achieve. It can be flexible, and it may not be exactly where your mind-body-spirit complex wants you to be in the long run. But what you're trying to do is better align your passion and purpose with some kind of mission in life that gives you both a fulfillment or sensation of fulfillment, being able to do things that help somehow. And then it also gives you the fulfillment or the excitement of being able to make a living and interacting with the world on its terms economically, so that you have those aspects of your life all together. And those kinds of things happen all the time.
So, and you mentioned alignment. So let's talk about two things: the mission. So defining what it is you want to do, and then we'll talk about being in alignment. So a lot of folks where they get tripped up is that maybe they're not doing something that they're real passionate about, something they love. So when the action part comes in, then it's a big pain, it's a hassle. They don't want to do it. They're gonna get into it a little bit and then just say forget it. And that's because they're not doing something that they truly love and have passion for.
Attitude is altitude.
Right. So that's a big thing. If you're not doing something you love, you're not gonna take it all the way. You're gonna end up stopping partway through, and then it's just not gonna happen for you.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Or it could happen, and if you're in a job that you don't necessarily like, but you still want to be in a better place in that company, that can happen too. Where if you take it to the next level, you're in this place. That's not going to change tomorrow unless you walk out. If you're going to walk out, have 6 months of income in the bank so that you can pay your bills while you're creating your new job. Okay, that's possible too. I've had clients do that. Now, on the other side, when you're in that position and wanting to change, you've got to find something that engages your passion and do that almost as a hobby for a time. Something that just gets you into that frame of mind and experience. And then you can transfer. It's like transferring a skill. Okay. You can transfer that back into where you're at that's not so pleasant. And you can begin to think about those kinds of feelings that you have, and for practical purposes, chop wood and carry water. So there are things that you're going to need to be doing in those jobs that are just simply part of the process. And by being able to learn how to enjoy them in whatever way you can is going to benefit you more than thinking about how you dislike what you're doing the entire time you're doing it.
So, and funny thing you mentioned that, because you and I were talking a while back, and I actually said I hated my job.
Right.
Okay, business analyst, and it was going terribly, and I'm wanting to just jump out and do some of these other things. It may not have been practical because of course we have bills to pay, and plus that job funds other things that I do. But it was horrible. My job was it was awful. I work a lot from a home office, and so it's a lot of emails and conferences, phone conferences and things. And my attitude was so bad. I mean, I didn't think people could pick up on it because I was always trying to be friendly. My emails were friendly, conversations were friendly. But inside, I was negative, and I really hated my job. And I remember I was speaking to you, and you just kind of looked at me and went, well, why don't you change your perception? I think that was basically what it was. And, and
it's a simple question, right?
It was very simple, and I know you just kind of planted the seed. Well, I'm at work the next day, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this. I have to change my mind about this because I can't continue to let other negative things be in my life, because it'll start to stifle my whole law of attraction thing and everything else I'm doing. So I really, really concentrated on changing my perception and making it better. And I'm not kidding you, within about 2 days it took. The emails that I was getting were much better, and the conversations I was having were much better. I didn't even have to really do anything besides just change my perception. And
how easy was that to do?
It was, well, once I decided to do it, it was
there's a choice.
There was a choice I had to make, because I really hated my job.
And you can't
at first.
make a choice and give a half-assed commitment.
No, you have to.
It's got to
Yeah.
really be, you've got to commit.
So I was committed. I was all in. Okay, because you're right. These things don't work just kind of part way.
Right.
So that it instantly got better, and then within about a week after that, we get our new operational plan for the upcoming year, and it was completely different. It was everything that I had wanted to do, that we had been planning to do. The whole landscape just changed dramatically, and
All
you know,
because, probably, all because you changed your perception and you allowed the world to change as a result. Because we see the world entirely differently when we shift our perspective. Most events happen, we see them from a center standpoint. There's all kinds of ways that we can see them in that circle around it. And we call that circular thinking. Okay? And we perceive things, and you can see them on opposite perspectives and all of that. Well, imagine spherical thinking. Okay, so now you've just taken that circle and made a sphere out of it. That's what you allowed to take place, because you took yourself out of the polarity of that circular thinking and allowed the unification of the spherical thinking to take place, where all the good stuff was able to happen. And it became harmonious.
And there's so much room
Right.
for more things to happen in there, because the way you explained it is perfect. It's kind of you're used to doing kind of a linear, flat thinking.
Linear thinking.
And then when you change it, it turns kind of three-dimensional. Right. And there's a lot more room for things.
You get into nonlinear and non-local experience at that time, where time essentially, it doesn't disappear, but it takes on a whole different perspective. And there's all kinds of other worlds that enter in that we may or may not be aware of in that process. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are just ready and willing and waiting for us to say, hi, help, please, and allow it to take place.
So let's also talk about being your true, authentic self. I think this is another thing.
Oh, what's that?
Well, yeah. Over
What
time.
do you mean by that? Authentic? I'm showing up. I'm real.
And people, they don't realize that they're being they're being a different person to maybe to please their parents, their teachers, their boss, try to fit in with their company, their club, their friends,
right.
And they're not being their authentic self. And
authentic self. Hi, I'm Zendor, and yes, you have been expecting me. No.
Yeah, we'll talk about how not being your authentic self can cause blocks in what you're trying to accomplish, and then how
we wear many
yourself.
masks. Okay, and yeah, I have this nice little mask bolo on. But think about it. When we show up, we have many different personalities. Not that we're polyphrenic, or we have multiple personality disorder, although that can happen depending on who's viewing us. Mm-hmm. We show up in situations and we wear masks depending on who we're dealing with. So there's all these kinds of personalities that we project given the situation. Well, what if we could just do away with all of those and show up with how we think and feel and be willing to express that from a head and heart space, and then begin to learn what that's like, instead of coming with an agenda thinking that we need to put on this or that hat in order to affect the results that we desire. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because then maybe I'm not living up to my expectations at work, right, or expectations of a loved one or family member.
We live in a codependent society. And the more we see how those things, how the societal views, the church, school, cliques, workplace, cohorts, they always affect how we perceive ourselves, because we're looking at what we think they see us like and then trying to become that, instead of looking at, how do I really want to be? What's true for me? Do I really believe that? And then how can I act as if, until I can embody that and not feel this emotional consternation and wavy graviness when we're interacting with others, because that does take time. Change doesn't happen overnight. You can see it at least took a couple of days for you to have that experience. So, and then you're fairly adept at being a project manager. Okay. So for those people who aren't project managers of their lives, this is a whole new thing that you offer in order for them to be able to become something new and something real for them.
So I think what we want to tell people is that being your true self kind of puts you in alignment with what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Because the alignment is the real thing. That's the real deal. I even take it to the point that, based on my own experiences, and this may or may not be understandable to your audience, but I truly believe we are cosmic consciousness condensed into form, becoming aware of the fact. And in our interactions with life, we learn how to embody that authentically.
Yeah, and I think what I noticed when I started kind of just saying, all right, I'm just going to be me. All right, then you don't have to worry about what you're going to say next. Yeah, you don't have to worry about what you're going to say next, what you're going to say on the phone call, what you're going to say to your boss, your loved one, because if it's coming from your heart and you're being you, then that's good enough.
And you naturally treat others how you would like to be treated.
Yeah, and I think it's about trusting
that
it's okay to be yourself.
Absolutely. Now, that gets also a little muddy sometimes if your lifestyle, let's say your childhood, your adolescent involvement and development, had an experience that really didn't offer the best for you. Then you've got a whole new situation or a different type of situation to address in how you want to be treated, because you're used to being treated
maybe poorly or something.
Yeah, less than what
desirable.
You would, and less than what you deserve. So then you have to really go back inside and look at, okay, what do I really deserve? How do I want to feel and think and engage life in the best ways that I possibly can? And sometimes you can find that naturally. Sometimes you need help. And that's what people like me are for.
Yeah. Hey, so I want to read something here, because this is kind of an interesting one. I think a lot of people, especially if they're reading about law of attraction online, you end up running into this one. It's called usually something like manifesting in 3 steps. Okay, and I think this gets down to kind of the core of what law of attraction is. But 3 steps: ask, believe, and receive. So ask for what it is that you want. Believe with complete sincerity that you already have what you want. And receive it and be grateful that your request was granted. So kind of let's start with asking. Okay, so what would that mean to you? Asking for what it is you want. How would you go about doing that if you were trying to bring something new into your life?
I would look at what it is I want. Let's say, let's look at the process I'm in right now. I'm attempting to attract another life partner. Okay, So I'm looking at how I want to feel with that partner. What kind of skills and attributes and personality and presence that individual has. Now, in the past, I've really gotten overboard in trying to define details.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not necessarily how the universe works. It sometimes does. However, there's an intelligence beyond ours that knows what's best. And you can still ask for those things and then be patient enough to have that list be malleable. Mm-hmm. And so you can morph it over time, and a lot of things that we attract, we figure out what we want by having what we don't want show up. And oddly enough, if we trace what we were thinking, we were probably thinking, well, I really don't want this. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Your mind doesn't hear don't or do. It hears this. So that shows up. Not that I'm talking about ambiguous pronouns.
But it's what you're giving the most attention to,
Absolutely.
Whether it's good, bad,
right.
indifferent.
Right, that's what's going to show up.
So, and also you're saying that when you're asking for something, maybe you don't have to give all the details, because you're saying the universe is smart enough to fill right. in those details.
If you're authentic, your intention is pure. That's really, I think, one of the key aspects is you really have to be pure inside with what you're asking for. It cannot be something that is self-aggrandizing or selfish.
So so it needs to be in alignment with you.
I believe so. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make it true.
Well, yeah, and this is your experience
right,
too.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. And that's all I can go by. It's my experience.
Okay, so again, so in the asking part is have good intentions, be clear, but maybe not fill in all the details, right. Especially if it's a relationship.
Or if you're starting out, hey, there's nothing wrong with creating a list. Mm-hmm. Lists work great. Guess what it does? It takes the etheric, whatever it is you're looking for, and it crystallizes it onto that paper. There's a lot of effort to do that, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, and even physically, to bring that into manifestation. You're writing it down. Write it down, make it happen. You'd be surprised what shows up.
So, and when you spoke about your intentions need to be pure. So, when you're thinking about this and emotionalizing it, mm-hmm. Make sure that it's clear that there's no doubt, fear, and any negative emotions mixed in.
At least be aware of that. There's probably going to be if you're just first starting out with this. Over time, those disappear, and they'll dissipate as you become more comfortable and trusting in the process.
Yeah.
But don't expect it to happen immediately.
Well, it's like with any good thing. Sometimes you got to practice.
Let me reframe that. You can have high expectations. I encourage those. And just don't let the disappointments become the focus of your attention.
Right. Okay, so then number 2 is believe.
Right.
Okay, and I think that's a little bit of that. You have to truly believe. You have to believe that this will happen.
Right. Yeah. Whatever you think and feel you believe, your beliefs are going to be true for you. That doesn't mean that it's going to align with the universe, but you're such a powerful being that your beliefs are going to become true for you. That's just how it works.
Yeah. And everyone's got the same ability to do these things. And I think one of the things I was doing, if I think back in the past, that when I was looking to do a project or thinking about something, asking for something, my thinking conscious would also say, well, you got to watch out for this. There could be a problem here. Because you remember last
Well, what
time you did
happens?
this, there was a problem. Well, those things do tend to crop. They tend to crop up.
Yeah,
You
it's
know.
amazing how that works.
But I think again, it's your ego, it's your thinking mind trying to protect you.
A lot of times now, there is no ego without we go. Because wherever you go, you drag everything else with
We
you.
go.
Okay? Now, a good thing, I think, to really be conscious of is laughing at yourself in the process, not to the point of self-deprecation. Okay, you don't put yourself down, but laugh at your silliness, at your humanness, at your ego, and how it crops up from time to time, and play with it, dance with it. Dance with your shadow, with all the doubts and the fears. If you don't like the tune, change it. Put on a different record.
Yeah,
Change the beat.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned as well. Is you have to have fun with it. It's not everything is that serious.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the main thing is you got to be happy about what you're doing when you're doing it.
Happy, fun, joy.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about living life on purpose and planning for good things to happen to you.
Wow. It's all good. Even in the most destructive, catastrophic situations, there's joy in that because things are happening. The chaos is happening in order for order to appear. This is a natural process of the universe. Chaos to order. Okay, we just need to recognize that. And if there's a chaotic period in your life, understand that order is right around the corner and you're just being positioned in order to be able to have it. Now, your question again?
Well, it was living life on purpose, but I want to dovetail on what you just said too. Is that you're absolutely right about the chaos part of it because there's been a couple of times I've been laid off from work and it was just it was absolutely devastating.
Sure, and it's going to be.
But
initially,
but it seems like the end of the world
right.
At first. But then now I look back on it, and it was the best thing that ever happened because it got me to the next place I needed to go. It made me grow, got me to the next business venture, the next job, and it turned out to be great. Okay,
absolutely. So. Now the question about purpose and life purpose and alignment and all those kinds of things. I'm not so sure that I'm the best one to ask for that because when I inquired what that was as a teenager, it set me up for the rest of my life, and I've had a various series of processes where I've learned multiple things of how to do stuff, and it's been wonderful. In the process of finding purpose in life, most people don't start looking for that till their mid-40s because they're raising families. And so there's that mid-40 empty nester, bridge buster, or bridge maker into the next phase of their world. They're looking for something to align with, something that gives them fulfillment for the next part of their lives. In order to do that, you don't have to completely eliminate what you've been or done. And a lot of people think that's part of the process. You've got to cut and start fresh. Mm-hmm. Well, you've got all this history that you can harvest, or herstory, depending on whether you're male or female. So in harvesting that, you've got skill sets, you've got abilities, you've got education, you've got networks, you've got all kinds of things that you may not even realize that you have until you get quiet. Start thinking about it. You get out of that mental chaos, and which is what you were talking about. When you're in this, it's like, oh shit, what am I going to do next? Okay, that's a great question. What are you going to do next? And what do you have to do that with? And then how can you take that and align it with something that allows you to be of service to the world or others or yourself. There was a long time ago I learned about law of one, and that had two aspects. It's kind of like duality, service to self and service to others. Well, the ultimate service to self would be service to others. And so that's how that bridge takes place. But there's usually that polarity. And we see life in polarities, good, bad, right, wrong, all of that. Well, most of the time, usually it's more undesirable or desirable instead of that stark polarity. And that comes on an emotional and a sensory basis where we can tell what's going on, what's good for us, and gives us the ability to express those beliefs that we were talking about through the actions that we take, and then being able to, the last thing you were talking about, receive that which is for us that shows up because of how we've set things in order.
Let's recap on that.
Okay.
So 3 steps to manifestation.
Ask, believe, and receive.
Believe and receive. But I think we should add a 4th one in there. But we should put it second. I think it should be ask, take action, believe, and receive. Because I think the action thing is more important than a lot of people
I think it
might
is
know.
the most important, because the emotion, the energy and motion that we put into receiving what it is that we want, that's the whole crux of the law of attraction. What you think and feel strongly, you're going to attract. Well, the best way to attract that is to move toward it somehow as well. That's the reciprocation, where the universe says, psst, psst, and you go, oh, yeah, and you head over.
And that's so true, because I've noticed that with me as well. Is the more I got out there, especially speaking with people, and especially people that are of like minds, that's kind of where the connection is, and that's where a lot of things start happening. For me, it's just been leaving the house and getting out there and doing things.
Right.
Starts making it happen. And if you have a great attitude about it, you'll find that things just start unfolding.
And you'll find out how great a sensory array you really have and how connected it is with everybody else. You'll have moments of telepathy where you'll think something, it'll come out of somebody else's mouth, okay, or vice versa. Where you'll have a sensation that you're feeling. You'll look around the room and you'll connect with somebody's eyes, and all of a sudden, you've got this dynamic duo that now brings you. That's if you take action and go introduce yourself. And now you have this interaction that takes place, and you've brought skill sets together that then launch a company or something to that effect. Those are the things that you've got to recognize. If somebody says what's on your mind, tell them they just said it. There's a cue. It's like the universe holding up a cue card. Or a flag, basically. Say, hey, look at me, over here, pay attention. Well, engage that. Anytime you have one of those, and you know this, and hopefully you do too, anytime you have a subtle impression or something shows up around you that attracts you, move toward it. Find out. Ask questions. Engage.
And I think, what you're talking about is keeping your eyes open, paying attention, and looking for signs is what I've called it, because I used to ignore them and not really think about them. But as soon as you kind of have your eyes open and you're aware, they're everywhere, and it's great. It's kind of
can get too distracting sometimes too, because when you really get quiet and become aware, everything speaks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun though.
Absolutely.
I think it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Because when you and I first met and we were first talking, it was that life purpose. I didn't really know what is my life purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? And that was the big part of it. Once you get your mind quieted down and start working on that, get quiet. It's funny. It's that other part kind of takes over and starts telling you, and then the good ideas
Right.
are able to come up through the surface, because those ideas have a tough time breaking through the surface when you have all that chatter
How can you expect it
in
to?
there.
Yeah, if you've got if you're running interference up here and something, you've got a seed that's trying to sprout, and you've got this interference of grates or however you want to term it. How's that going to get up through it? Because every time it gets cut.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like shears. Well, Billy's not here. However, you have this magical mystery tour that's available just when you begin to pay attention.
And so I have to mention with synchronicity or signs is that one time I was sending you an email, and I'm in mid sentence, and then the phone rings and it's you. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I was just mid sentence with an email with you, and you called, and the other day we were meeting at this one place, gigantic parking lot, and I park over on the side so people don't park right next to me. Yeah. I'm just pull up. I'm sitting there for about 2 seconds, and some guy starts backing in the spot right next to me, and I'm like, "Who is this guy?" And it's you. Yeah. It's it. I'm like, of all, this giant parking lot. It could have been any time, but it was that very second.
And there was no thought involved, which is really the evidence of just how well things can work when we get out of our way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so kind of a recap again. Ask, take action, believe, receive, and be happy while you're doing all that.
Yeah. That's if you're not in joy, then you need to be doing something else.
Right, something that does make you happy and joyful, and you'll be much better.
Would you like to be around you when you're?
Yeah, no, you don't want to be around me when I'm like that.
Yeah. Does anybody want to be around themselves when they're angry or upset or whatever? Oh, That's not to say it's not going to happen, because life happens when we have emotions. We're not automatons.
Well, let's talk about that real quick then, because
okay.
So everybody has a bad day.
Yeah.
Something's going to make you kind of upset, angry, stressed, or something like that. What kind of a technique to kind of, sometimes you can't just reverse it and go from being really upset to really happy.
Yeah.
Do you kind of move through a middle ground on that to kind of get back to that?
I think one of the keys of that first is not to deny what's going on. Mm-hmm. You have a right to feel that way because you've just had a major upheaval. And it's not fun. So allow yourself to experience that not fun. And then realize this too shall pass. And once you can have that in place, then you'll recognize, okay, now I've gone through that process of feeling yuck. Mm-hmm. Now what's next? Where do I want to go with that? And it may just be that it's, you need to have those feelings. You need to be able to let yourself have those feelings and then move on. Not take them with you. You don't want to carry the baggage. There's no carry-on this flight even. Okay? So, you can carry it with you if you want, but why? Mm-hmm. So in that effort to make the shift, it's a conscious thing that you kind of have to remember. Okay, I'm okay with this. It happened. I'm still alive. I'm breathing. I can smile about that. I can review and see what I could have done better that might have made that situation less destructive or not even happen at all. And this is where we can look back and see how we can grow rather than pointing fingers at others. Because the really interesting thing about pointing fingers, you got 3 of them coming back at you. All right? So looking at that perfect example, this is just natural order right here, right? You're just paying attention. You got this one going out, well, you got 3 of them coming back. Ask, seek, and believe, or, ask, take action, and receive. That's one thing where you can, what did I do? What could I have done better? Do it the next time, and look at the results. I just came off with that off the cuff, but there's all kinds of things that those three fingers could represent, even if it's solutions to a problem. Before you point a problem out, have three solutions in hand. That way you're not just complaining.
So it's okay to be upset or emotional for maybe that day or
That's
something.
what you are. Let it happen. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think what's important is to, as quick as you can, get back into a good, happy,
And
upset.
I think the more you allow that, the less you resist it, the sooner you'll get through it. It's like we were talking earlier, what you resist persists. If you resist all of that, then you're going to stay there for a while longer. Let it happen. Get over it. Move on. Next.
All right, perfect. So I think they're yelling at us to wrap up.
All right.
So appreciate you being on, Zen.
My pleasure, man.
Thanks.
Enjoy it.